Radio Times does gaming? I was shocked, I tell you. I was mortified and then shocked. And then I thought, well, why not? I mean, obviously they do everything else. But Radio Times? Really?
Fighting is a hellhole.
Okay, I was maybe being a bit dramatic.
Robot Samurai just appears out of nowhere, kills all the robots, and then vanishes. So yeah, it's a Kojima game.
So I have been eaten by sandworms. I'm not proud of it.
Radio Times does gaming?
Yes, Radio Times does gaming. I'm Rob Leane, I'm the gaming editor at Radio Times, and today we're bringing you 3 hot topics from the world of gaming. In this first segment, I'm going to tell you about how Arkham Knight changed my life. The year was 2015. The game was Batman Arkham Knight, the 4th entry in the series that Rocksteady had been absolutely smashing out of the park for years. But, interestingly for me at the time, the first one that they said would only be coming to the PS4, Xbox One generation, and not to PS3, which is the main thing I had at the time. Before it was my life working in gaming, I was one of those people that would absolutely rinse the previous console for all it was worth before hoping that for a price drop or eventually picking up a second hand or borrowing one off a mate of the new console. And this was the turning point for me, which turned out to be quite a big turning point in my life when a game I really wanted to play was not going to come out on the platform that I had. Being a cheapskate, I noticed that a friend of mine, hi Nathan, was going travelling for quite some time around the same time that Arkham Knight was coming out. And I saw an opportunity to basically steal his PS4 while he was away and play Arkham Knight without having to shell out for a new console. Little did I know, this started a chain reaction of events that led to me sitting in this chair here today, working in the games media world, which was not on my mind really at that moment in time. At the time, I was relatively fresh out of uni, had started doing some freelance writing, but I'd mainly been focusing on movies and TV shows, did a lot of kind of superhero stuff. You know, the MCU was quite big at the time. The CW had about 50 DC Comics shows going on. Game of Thrones was on at the time. I had done the odd bit and bob writing about video games, but it was mainly just ones that I remembered fondly, such as Knights of the Old Republic, which I've already spoken about many times in this current job. But it wasn't a huge part of my life. You know, you come out of uni, you don't have loads of money, you're still trying to figure things out. Like I said, Nathan was going away. I had a nice clean run up at Arkham Knight. And I remember being super excited for that game at the time. It had the whole bigger and better promise of, you know, the open world Gotham is going to be a lot more expansive. There's going to be loads more places you can go. They were adding in the Batmobile for the first time, and I remember being intrigued by the story, and I'm not sure if it's revisionist history to say that everyone kind of knew what the twist was going to be. I think there was an element of mystery as to who was the Arkham Knight who was the villain of the game. But yeah, I just remember being super thrilled to be able to play it, and I think it's interesting at this moment in time as well, with the Switch 2 just coming out, to think about what are the games that are really going to sell a system or get people motivated to find a way to get into that ecosystem. I don't think the Switch 2 quite has that yet, although it has obviously sold very, very well. But other than Mario Kart, what are people going to buy it specifically to play? Basically, yeah, this started a chain reaction. I remember playing Arkham Knight, absolutely loving it, racing through it, and there are bits of it that are still somewhat derided in the fan base. I remember the idea that the Riddler had gone away and made a series of basically go-karting tracks around the city for Batman to drive around in his Batmobile maybe slightly stretched the you know, vaguely kind of gritty and could happen in real life vibe that those games were kind of half going for. I mean, it's a lot of effort on the Riddler's part. Those bits were quite fun. They were more fun than like the bomb disposal things that you also had to do in the Batmobile. But I thought it was a great story, and as like my first experience on a new console, I remember being blown away by how big the world was, how kind of dense it was. They still do the thing of like, there's not that many people running around in the open world, but it was impressive at the time. They're like, oh, there's a curfew or something. But I remember loving it, and that game had some huge story beats towards the end as well, that more recently the Suicide Squad game kind of had to reckon with, of like, wait, how is Batman alive? I think there was like a 100% ending that would kind of explain, would leave enough of a breadcrumb for them to bring Batman back and then kill him again and then bring him back again. But I I hope to try and interview some of the Arkham Knight developers for the 10th anniversary, which is this week. But as I went asking around, it seems that most of the kind of key directors of the game, at least, are no longer at Warner Brothers and have gone off to start their own company, which I'm very excited about, but it's all shrouded in secrecy at the moment. But I thought I would try, just telling a bit of story from my life. This is the story of how I got Arkham Knight, and it basically then meant that when my editors at the time, I was writing for a place called Den of Geek, suddenly started asking for more gaming content and more ideas. And hey, Rob, you know gaming, right? And I was like, I'm the proud owner of a PS4. I'm ready to go. And that weirdly started the chain reaction of then I did more gaming stuff for them, and then eventually that became a full-time job, and then that led to the job that I'm in now, kind of indirectly. And so yeah, and now I've been working in gaming for years, or in the proximity of the gaming world for years. And I mean, it's been such a net positive. You meet so many people. I've kind of traveled around to all sorts of places for work. And also, I think the main positive of working as a games journalist is that you just get to try so many games without having to, fork out for all of them, basically. And there's so many games that I wouldn't have probably touched with a barge pole. Growing up, I was very much into like licensed games like Batman and Star Wars and stuff like that, and I've played a lot of FIFA with my mates. And like by getting into gaming journalism, I've discovered so many things. I don't think, Baldur's Gate is an example that comes to mind. The recent Zelda games, I wasn't a huge Zelda kid growing up. The decision that I had to try and find a way to play Arkham Knight then meant that I was geared up in the right way when suddenly I was being asked for gaming stuff. And it's the classic, I was a freelancer at the time. So if someone says, oh, you're into this thing, right? And you're like, yeah, you've got a budget for this, right? But yeah, it all turned out well in the end. Here I am talking to you. And I'm still kind of hoping. There's rumours that Rocksteady, under the new stewardship of James Gunn at the head of DC, that they're working on a DC something. And I would love to see that. I did play that Suicide Squad game. I think the story of it was okay, but the gameplay was like so far away from what it used to be, and like the structure of the game, trying to make it more of a multiplayer ongoing seasons thing, which then kind of backfired on them. It was a strange one, but I've got hope that this franchise will come back. But yeah, 10 years since Arkham Knight, and I still remember it so vividly. And yeah, I hope they make another one, or even if they don't, I'm very tempted to give this one a fresh play for the anniversary.
Here comes a new challenger!
A new challenger enters. For the first time on the podcast, I'm being joined by someone that is not Alex. Oh my gosh. Today we have Anna Mahtani with us, who has just reviewed Dune Awakening for RadioTimes.com. Anna, lovely to have you. What did you think of the game?
Oh my god. Fun but grueling. I've been playing Dune Awakening for about 25, 30 hours, and I will say it gets better the more you play, but it's definitely a challenge.
So I read your review, and the gist kind of seemed to be that the vibes are really strong, but maybe the gameplay doesn't always live up to the feeling of it, kind of thing.
I think that's definitely true. It's a game that does get better the more you play it, but throughout, when you're not looking at the beautiful landscape or enjoying the music, you are constantly plagued with quite similar issues when it comes to fighting. And I know that despite my fighting skills being quite low, I'm not the only one who's struggled with this.
Okay. I mean, you did write some notes before we came in, and the main thing is fighting is a hellhole.
Okay, I was maybe being a bit dramatic.
No, be dramatic.
You know what? I'm just going to say fighting one-on-one, fighting one-on-two, a great time. I love going in. You can take people's blood, drink it as water. It's fun. When it comes to the kind of dungeons, which are these Imperial testing stations, it is level after level of continuing to fight very similar enemies who can quickly swarm you, who have shields, who you can't gun down, and who will respawn if you die. So it just means that eventually you give up.
What a depressing life.
Yeah, sorry. I do promise it's fun.
What's like kind of like the overarching like shape of the game? Like, what are you kind of trying to achieve? You have to like join a different house at the start, kind of thing?
So houses are something that gets introduced a bit later in the game.
Okay.
And you have to kind of join them by doing missions for different people, aligning with factions. But early on, basically, you are a prisoner who has been enlisted by the Bene Gesserit to go and awaken the Fremen, who have been extinct in this Dune timeline. That means that basically you land in this desert. You have to figure out how to how to not die of dehydration, how to get supplies, build a base, and slowly build up your skills until you can find the Fremen, awaken them, and I guess save the day? I'm not sure. I haven't reached that point.
TBC, something happens. And it's an online game, right? So to what extent are you having to do this alongside other people, or are you kind of hanging out on your own? How does it work?
So I would say that the MMO aspect is something that doesn't feel like it interacts with gameplay a lot. There are some areas where you can fight other players, but those are very specific sections. And because, you have a lot of sprinting abilities, you'll only really fight the players if you're choosing to. I've kind of played with a few people, spoken with a few other players in the game, and tried to form parties. But one of the difficulties is it's quite hard to keep track of your party members and friends whilst they're playing. So it's easy to get split up and for the party to disband through no fault of your own. What I will say is it's quite sweet when you're walking past and you see someone fulfilling the same missions as you. You're kind of just on parallel lines. And yeah, it's cute, but that's about all it is.
Okay, that sounds cool, because one thing I think people are asking is can I play this on my own? Can I play it offline? It's offline, no, but kind of on your own, kind of, yeah?
Absolutely. So you can't play on offline, but I think playing on your own, unless you have a group of friends who you're, joining the same server on purpose to play together, I'd say playing on your own is probably the best experience that you're going to get out of it.
And you wrote a lovely guide for us about the different mentors and classes that you kind of get to choose along the way. What did you go for? Any advice for people, what they should pick, stuff like that?
I went for the Bene Gesserit, just because they seemed like the coolest ones.
Yeah.
I also think they're a really good one to start the game with, because they give you this ability to compel your enemies to come towards you and be staggered for a bit, which means you can kill them much easier. And as you go on, basically it allows you to control your body and self-revive. My proudest achievement is that I've gained the accomplishment of having revived myself 100 times in battle, which apparently only 2% of players have, and it's fully reflective of how many times I get killed.
That's quite helpful, though, in a game that's has a multiplayer component, is the ability to revive yourself. I would have loved that in Elden Ring. Would have been great.
It would have been helpful.
Yeah.
I think you can also revive your party members,
yeah,
but I don't have enough friends for that.
No, exactly. Revive yourself 100 more times if you have to. So tell me more widely about the vibes of the game. What, because obviously it's such a beautiful, the film is what I have in my mind, but it must be a cool world to explore. It's
really cool. So they do use elements of Zimmer's Arkham. So the soundtrack's really sick, and then they've also got their own composer who's amazing. I think the vibes that it gives definitely does capture something of the films and something of the novels, but overall it kind of gives it a sense of being quite retro, and I mean that in a good way. It feels, it might be because some of the mechanics are slightly janky, but in a nice way. It feels like a blast from the past, and I think it makes for quite a nicely disconnected experience playing.
Amazing. And how do the sandworms work? It sounds slightly terrifying if you're just walking around and you're going to get attacked.
Yeah. So I have been eaten by sandworms. I'm not proud of it. When you do get eaten by sandworms, you can't get any of your stuff back. It's just gone.
Oh. And
you're saddled with a sandworm tooth that just takes up space in your inventory forever now. So I'm not sure what happens if you fill your bag with them. I assume it's not good. Sandworms basically live in the open sand areas. So most of what you're doing is playing among the rocks and trying to hide in the places that are safe. But if you ever venture out into the sand, you walking and running creates vibrations that draws the sandworms to you. So it'll be little squiggly lines that appear on screen, and if they're orange, sandworms may be clocking you. If they go red, you're in for trouble. Later on, you can create ornithopters and other vehicles that will let you traverse sand, so that even if you're being chased by one of them, you're fine. But yeah, no one can run away from the Shai-Hulud. They're horrifying.
And you mentioned that you can't get a buggy until later on either, which seems a bit on the stingy side.
It's quite sad. Although I think they're quite useful because later on the kind of end game section is this big open sand dunes that you can go into and try to mine spice from. But obviously because of the sandworms, you have to kind of collaborate with other players and get them to draw them away so that you can mine safely before coming back to your base.
I see. One detail in your review I wanted to ask you about is the method of getting liquid and hydration. Sounds quite grim.
It's a little bit. You unlock an achievement called Vampire as you play quite early on. So basically, in order to stay hydrated in the game, there are these plants that you can use to drink water, but they will make you nauseous, and that runs out really quickly. So what you have to do is create a blood extractor. So every time you kill an enemy, you go in afterwards once everyone's dead, take a little slab, put it in your little blood container, and have a lovely little slurp. It's great.
That's so gross.
It does completely wreck your health, so you do have to purify it, but you can have it straight from the source if you want.
Cool. It's the first time that I've felt the need to say do not try this at home on anything we've put out. But yeah, so what would you say generally? I know you gave it 3 stars in the review, but would you it seemed like generally you were coming to it from quite a hopeful place, and you can see a bright future for the game if it gets like, they've already said there's some extra stuff coming down the line, right?
So they've already got 3 DLCs that are planned, one of which is going to be coming this year. And I do think that there's a lot to love in it. You know, some of the mechanics are quite fun. The desert is amazing, and it's kind of worth it just to be there to mine and craft and create resources. But I think a lot of my hope was focused on maybe slightly more immersive battles and something that would feel a lot more fluid. And that's not quite where the game's at yet. But hopefully patches will kind of come in and save the day.
Nice. Well, something to look forward to, hopefully. Thank you very much for coming on and chatting about it.
Thank you very much.
Good news, everyone. Alex is back from the wilderness to chat to us.
The wilderness, North London.
Yeah, he's back from the dark side of the moon to talk to us about a little game he's been playing called Death Stranding 2.
Death Stranding 2.
Yes.
I thought you were going to say the other one.
No, Death Stranding 2.
Death Stranding 2.
Not
I
the one you went
that.
to North London for. So, yeah, how have you been getting on with it? What's the vibe?
It's good. I'm a big fan. It is. So I started playing it immediately after finishing the first one, which I think I was kind of worried that it would be quite a lot. Death Stranding 1 is a lot, famously. But yeah, it's been really good. There's, I think, enough difference and enough new stuff that it doesn't feel like exactly the same game. I'm just doing the same thing over and over again.
You sent me a link to one of the showcase things, and the graphics on this game look absolutely absurd.
Yeah, so they recently showed, in preparation for the launch, like an opening cinematic. Kojima got all of his actor friends to come on stage and talk about how great he is. And they showed the opening cinematic of the game, which is kind of... so it's set in Mexico, and they do this sort of very cinematic series of shots of like a kind of desert in Mexico. And when I first saw it, I was like, oh, this is all real footage. They've gone to Mexico to film all of this. And then at the end of it, they do this nice swoop round. There's Sam, and it goes straight into gameplay. It's all in-engine stuff. Jeff Keighley was there. He said it was an engine, and I trust that man with my life. And yeah, it was incredible. I thought, it's just for the opening. Like, I'm sure the other areas are going to be less
It becomes
nice
like
looking.
a stick man after.
Yeah. But yeah, like, it's incredible. And I'm not usually someone that cares that much about graphics, but the whole time I've been playing this, I've just been looking at stuff and being like, this is crazy. Like, and it's the first time I've felt FOMO about not having a PS5 Pro, because I have a normal PS5, and I'm thinking there, like, if it looks this good on my PS5, then surely I can't even imagine what it's like on the beefy one.
On the PS5 beef.
Yeah.
It looks like it's on kind of the upper end of like facial capture and photoreal people as well. Like, I mean, the first one was as well.
Yeah, they've really gone all out, and I don't know how much I can say. The embargo does say I'm not allowed to mention certain new characters, spoilers. So I will say, like, in comparison to the first game, there definitely is a big upgrade. Like, you can tell that they've really upped the tech on some of these scans, and people like Fragile, Sam, Deadman, all of these people that were in the first game look significantly better. Not that they looked bad in the first game, but you can really tell like the difference that it's made.
I can only assume we're going to get some more Norman Reedus gifs out of this bad boy.
Yeah, we've already kind of had a lot. There's a lot of kind of him looking at the camera and doing the whole like thumbs up thing. He does that a few times. I think that's one of the things I love the most about the first game is it's such like an over the top serious story, and then they will just like throw in a random moment where the super serious character who never talks and is afraid of people touching him is suddenly like throwing up thumbs ups at the camera, like looking into the camera and going, yeah, great. And yeah, there is a lot of that in 2 as well. They're not holding back on any of that.
Nice. And one thing that does slightly scare me about Death Stranding is the story and lore kind of side of it. Kind of what's the setup this time? What do people need to know or remember from the last one?
So minor, well, I guess Death Stranding 1 spoilers. At the end of Death Stranding 1, Sam is meant to go and burn Lou because Lou, got to get rid of the BBs, and they both disappear. And Death Stranding 2 you learn that, Sam actually disappeared to Mexico. He's escaped America after connecting everything. He can't be found by UCA. And Fragile, who has now left Fragile Express and has set up her own new company called Drawbridge, which is a private company that's there to now connect the rest of the world. That's sort of, she's been hired by the UCA to connect Mexico, and she can't be bothered. So she's found Sam, and
Nice.
She's hired Sam as a freelancer to connect Mexico for her. And so she goes, I'll take care of Lou. They're living in like a cave hidden by loads of holograms of BTs and stuff. And so Sam goes, okay, I'll do it if you can promise me that no one is going to bother me ever again. And essentially, he sets out and things go wrong. The idea of Sam never being bothered again quite quickly goes out the window.
I mean, that would be a bad game.
Yeah, he gets bothered quite a lot. And essentially, the plot of the game is that all of the connecting Sam did in America has caused a magic portal, obviously, to open up in Mexico, made of like chiral energy, and it connects to Australia.
Okay.
Of course it does. They sent a robot through, they found out it was Australia, some Australians came through, nice time. And so then essentially you're told, if you want to solve all of this stuff, everything's gone horribly wrong, off you go to Australia to fix it. For some reason. They don't really explain why you're in Australia, but also it's kind of, because everything has gone wrong, Sam has he's having a bad time. He's kind of losing it. And everyone is kind of taking advantage of the fact that he's losing it to chuck him through the portal and go, listen, you want to fix all of this. I'm about to sneeze. If you want to fix all of this, go to Australia, connect everything. I can't really say much more without giving it away, but essentially, he's in Australia now. There's Australians everywhere. They've got their own stuff to deal with, their own BTs. It's all a mess. Get back to delivering, basically.
I can only imagine it's a good time to be an Australian celebrity that Kojima has heard of.
Well, I have seen some. I'm pretty sure that it was already confirmed, so I can say that George Miller is in it.
Oh, sick.
Who Kojima repeatedly calls his god. He loves Mad Max. He loves George Miller.
He loves Babe.
He loves Babe. He loves Happy Feet. Huge George Miller fan. So George Miller is in it. He plays a guy that pilots a ship that it's like a submarine that swims through tar instead of water because there's tar everywhere in this world. And essentially, when you're going through Australia, you have this roaming base that follows you. So you go to a new area, you set up the chiral network like you did in the first game, but then this base comes with you with Fragile on it, with George Miller on it, and his weird tar cat. And yeah, there are some returning characters that you'll know from the first game, but I think it's mainly, a lot of it is you're interacting with this new crew from Drawbridge. There's an Alan Wake puppet kind of guy.
Oh, yeah, I saw that.
I initially I thought he's just sort of a character that hangs around in the base. But no, he comes with you. You attach him to your belt, and he makes quips. You can throw him, you can like chuck him into the distance, and he acts like a watchtower, and he like scans the area.
Isn't it someone famous voices the puppet? Or
I'm not sure who voices the puppet actually, but whoever they are, they've nailed. Like, if I had to say like what a puppet voice would sound like, that is what a puppet voice would sound like.
I remember when we first started chatting about recording something about Death Stranding 2, you were saying you were still in the kind of what the hell is going on phase. Do you feel like you've got more of a handle on it?
In a sense. So, like, if you've played the first game, you'll know that you start out just delivering stuff. And the more you deliver and the more you extend the chiral network, you kind of begin to understand that there's like something deeper going on. There's like a level of conspiracy. You're not just doing what is on the surface level. And right from the start of Death Stranding 2, you know that there's something deeper going on. But again, like Death Stranding 1, it takes a long time for them to actually explain what's going on. So for most of it, you are kind of Sam Bridges having a mental breakdown in the middle of Australia, which, I mean, I'm loving it. I think it's great. And eventually you do get to the point where you do understand like what's going on, and it's as bizarre and wacky and off-kilter as the first one. It's probably more bizarre and off-wacky, and like there was one moment where a lot of people have said that it's kind of going back to Metal Gear Solid kind of vibes.
Oh, yeah.
And I think the best way of explaining both that and how weird it is that quite early on in the game, something happens, a load of robots appear to attack Sam, and he has his life saved by a robot samurai. Robot samurai just appears out of nowhere, kills all the robots, and then vanishes. Crazy. And then the robot is just not brought up again for ages. That just happens, and then you're like, right, okay, I better get back to what I was doing. So yeah, it's a Kojima game.
Yeah. I actually had that trailer where it was the guy with the bandana looking very Snake.
Yes, yeah.
Have you got to that yet? That's probably a spoiler.
Well, yeah, I don't want to say too much.
Fair. I know on the first one you got very into making roads and then zip lines. Is there anything like mechanically this time that you're enjoying with that?
I've kind of tried to avoid the roads. I got far too obsessed with making roads that by the end, like, I had to just stop making them. I had to like finish the game, because otherwise I would still be making roads now. So I've made a point of trying to not build as much stuff this time around, and just kind of play through the story, not get so hung up on delivering literally everything, because I can come back and deliver literally everything when I don't have an embargo. There's a lot more it's a lot freer with the building. So very early on you get your first PCC, and you have a lot more freedom with what you can build, and the stuff that you can build is upgraded from the first game. So for example, timefall shelters in the first game were essentially, you build them, you can sit under them and wait for it to stop raining. But in a lot of areas, it never stops raining. So it's kind of not really that useful. In this game, one timefall shelters now collect rainwater, so you can fill up your canteen. They emit like a BT repellent spray. So if you're in a BT area, you can build one, stand under it, and sort of throw grenades out, fire your gun without like worrying about being caught. And I think for me, the most useful thing is that you can dump your cargo there. So there's a mission near the start of the game where you're tasked with clearing out a BT area. And instead of, you're doing it on the, like, while you're on a delivery. So instead of having to either carry all the stuff into the fight and risk falling over and damaging all of it, or leaving it and then going back to get it later, you build the timefall shelter, you dump all your stuff there, and then you go off, kill all the BTs, come back, grab your stuff, and head off. And I think it's stuff like that that really improves on the first game, where they're not going like, Oh, you know the thing games do where they make the sequel and they've got to make it your character like really weak again.
Oh yeah.
They've kind of made a point of, by this point Sam is like a legendary porter, so that's reflected in how you do things. The technology's developed, you have more access to it. It doesn't baby you. It goes, look, you've played the first game. It would be wild to play this game without playing the first game.
I can't imagine that'd be a very common thing.
And it just says, look, you know what you're doing. You're Sam Porter Bridges. Here's all of the new stuff. Knock yourself out. And I think, it's been really good to go from Death Stranding 1 to Death Stranding 2 and not feel like I'm playing the same game, even though like fundamentally you're doing the same thing. There's enough new stuff that it feels like a real improvement.
Nice. And like you say, it definitely feels like it's aimed at people who've already played the first one. They're not saying it's like a jumping in point and everything.
There are bits of it where there's like exposition thrown at you, but it feels kind of more like, hey, remember this? For people who, I guess, played it 6 years ago and have not thought about it since, and they've gone, who are these characters? I'm like, oh, I don't remember that. Yeah, it's definitely made for people that played the first one.
Yeah. And do you get the vibe that people who are in that camp will generally have a good time? Well, not necessarily a good time. Do you think people who enjoyed the first one will still enjoy the second one?
Oh, yeah, for sure. I think that if you're someone that hated it, as I know a lot of people did, like the walking simulator stuff, the wild, like incomprehensible lore, if you didn't like that the first time around, you're not going to like this. But for the people that did like the first one, I think the people who like the first one love the first one. It's the same. You're going to love the second one. It's just more Death Stranding. It's everything that the first did so well, and it's just more of it. It's brilliant, yeah.
Amazing. Well, I think on that note, let's leave it there. Thank you very much for telling us all about the game.
You're very welcome.
Radio Times does gaming.
What do you think at home? Did you hate Death Stranding 1 or did you love it and therefore are excited to play the second one? Let us know in the comments. Bye.